Hi guys, it's me, Christopher here, and welcome back to yet another audio book reading. Now I checked the content, and we are on the final chapters, the final 3 short chapters of book 1. And it shouldn't be that much long now till we get started on book 2 next week. Now, I've been meaning to get this recorded all yesterday, but I had complications between what's going on Discord, and transfer my quest, and not a whole lot of people like me being around, so yeah. And also I've been doing my art with the new Maximus form, getting me views on my gallery and all that kind of stuff. But let's get right to it, and let's enjoy what these final chapters have to offer.
18 The Secret Room, City of the Iron Tower, France, January 10th. Jeremy paused his account of the story to embrace Elida, who was weeping softly, leaning against the stacks of newspapers piled high in the back of the van. "Be strong," he whispered. "Don't cry. Don't cry." When she had gathered herself, Elida pulled a handkerchief from her pocket and used it to blow her nose and dry her damp eyes. "Thanks guys," she murmured. "I love you." They remained in silence for a short while, listening to the dull roar of the van. "Is there anything else that I should know?" Elida asked them eventually. "Only that," Jeremy started. "Some weeks ago, we went back to the supercomputer hall," Odd said. "We'd talked about it, as a group, and thought about the secrets we shared," added Ulrich. "But also of the dangers that had been posed to us. XANA had tried to kill us, then what with William, and your father, we'd come to understand that what we had taken for a giant video game was more than that, that it in fact, had repercussions for the entire world. For reality. And so we decided we had to turn it off, shut down the supercomputer. It was you who did it in the end, Elida. You were the single one with the right to do it, or so your father had explained it to us. You went up to the master switch alone, with us standing behind you, and then you said, 'My father would have wanted it this way,' and pulled the lever. And then we went back to my bedroom," Jeremy concluded. "We also dismantled my laptop, the one with which I was remotely accessing the factory computer. We shut the pieces in his wardrobe. Like he said. And that was the end of it. It wasn't like I needed access to the supercomputer anyway, though it would have been useful for buying the train tickets," Jeremy said, scratching his head. "Yeah, make a note of that," Odd added. "Because next time we travel I don't want these economy seats again." In spite of everything, in spite of the still fresh pain of certain memories, Odd's offhand remark had a strange effect on them all. Hesitantly, almost as if ashamed to, they began to laugh, lightly and first, then with more and more force. And, when they stopped, they understood that shared laughter was one of the most beautiful parts of their friendship. Someone knocked on the van's loading door. "Hey, you guys. You all right in there?" It was Rene Crane. They heard him fuss with the lock, and then the door opened with a click. It was still very dark outside. The man's jacket was covered with a thin layer of snow, and a small hurricane of tiny white flecks swirled agitatedly behind him. Jeremy leaned out from the van and saw that further snow had settled on the street. It had to be at least 30 centimeters deep. "Have we arrived?" he asked. "You guys have," Rene answered. "But my brother and I have a bit more driving to do. And in this weather it won't be easy." "Well, good luck to you then." Yumi came round to the back of the van with the policeman. The girl's eyes were swollen and her face was sinking into her scarf. "Someone's had a good sleep," commented Ulrich, affectionately tooling her hair. The Crane brothers had dropped them off in front of Kadic Academy's main entrance, the ornate black gate itself standing firm between two pillars of red brick, and beyond it was the long driveway that cut through the grounds and led towards the school's imposing buildings. currently swallowed up in the snow and gloom. Can you find your way home from here? Officer Crane asked. Yes, thank you, our house is quite nearby, Jeremy assured him. Less than 10 minutes by foot. Well, there's nobody out on the streets at this hour, so I doubt you'll be at any risk, the policeman concluded. But I recommend that you don't get yourselves into trouble again. No, sir. And remember that on Tuesday I'll be contacting your headmaster to ensure for myself that you've repaid the debt on his credit card. Yes, sir. Eventually Roger Crane smiled. Well then, Godspeed, kids. And if you ever need another lift, just come find me. Right, but not to prison. Odd hurriedly specified. This time they all laughed, standing next to the van in the middle of the snow that continued to fall relentlessly. It was settling everywhere. It fell on the school, on the city's old industrial quarter beside the river, on the rusted iron bridge, and the roofs of the deserted factory that occupied the entirety of its little island, and which silently held within it a secret underground castle. The children made their way slowly along, staggering drunkenly as they were assailed by the buffeting gusts of the angry, icy wind. Eventually, Odd leaned against a mailbox and sighed. Guys, I don't think I can go any further. I'm hungry, cold, and above all else I'm about ready to pass out from sleep deprivation. Just a little more, Odd. 5 minutes and we'll be at the house. Oh, I can't wait for the moment when I can slip under a warm duvet. Jeremy shook his head. You won't get the chance, I'm afraid. It's 5:30 in the morning, we've only got 3 hours before school begins. So what? Have you already forgotten about Mr. Brulette? And the walled-up room? What, you want to go looking for it, right now? Odd, I feel this is the perfect night for it, Elida intervened. The last night of our winter vacation. Finally, they reached the Hermitage and waited shuddering under the porch while Elida inserted the key and turned it in the lock. Inside the villa had conserved some of the warmth from earlier in the afternoon, even though, when they left to catch the train, the group had turned off the central heating. At this point I understand if sleeping is out of the question, lamented Odd. Otherwise we won't get the chance tomorrow morning. But can we at least have something to eat? Who wants some sandwiches? Everyone did. Ulrich lit the boiler and turned it up to its highest setting, and then the 5 of them took refuge in the kitchen. The leftovers from their dinner earlier included bread, part of an omelette, various cheeses, and some chocolate spread. They were quickly plated up and within a few minutes all of their jaws were fully engaged in chewing. As far as this walled-up room is concerned, Jeremy said at last. I think we should split up. Odd, Yumi and Ulrich, you guys work round the house knocking on the walls to see if you can find any that sound hollow. Elida and myself, meanwhile, will explore the attic. If Hopper really did leave behind a map, then she's the only one of us likely to find it. Okay, nodded Ulrich. And if anyone finds something, call the rest of us. While the others began to beat against the walls with the palms of their hands, Jeremy took down the books off the highest shelf in the attic study and laid them on the floor, then he began methodically leafing through them. Elida meanwhile was wandering about the room. At one point, she noticed a worn-out leather case left on a shelf and said, there really is a little bit of everything here, look. A little chemistry set, at least 20 years old. She sat on the floor beside her friend and started to sort through the books with him. Jeremy, what kind of a person was my father? She asked eventually. I didn't know him as a person, not really. But he contacted you. Yes. And you worked together. For a short time, on the program that destroyed XANA. I would never have succeeded without him. He hesitated for a moment, and then added, he was the most brilliant mind I've ever known. And he loved you dearly. They continued their work in silence, eventually finishing with the books and instead searching through the magazines and periodicals. They had still found nothing useful, no notes scribbled in the margins, no suspicious pen marks, no scraps of paper slipped between the covers and the dust jackets. Nothing upon nothing. At the bottom of the attic stairs Ulrich's voice called up to them. Guys, where are you? We're finished. And the result is a big fat 0, I'm sorry. It's the same up here. Come up and give us a hand, Jeremy proposed. One by one the others arrived in the study. They all had distraught faces. But nobody complained and they kept on working. Nothing outside at the end. What about that pile of magazines over there? I already checked them. The professor had done his job perfectly. If he really had left instructions as how to find the walled room, then they were extremely well hidden. Let's assume that we're looking for an actual map, Ulrich mused. But if that were the case, then Professor Hopper could have hidden it anywhere. For example, on a wall that was then painted over, or in a piece of furniture, beneath a double bottom. I don't know why, interjected Elida. But I was convinced it would be in a book. And I can say that if I was hiding something I would have chosen to conceal it in this, the complete works of Edgar Allan Poe. Why? I'm feeling a sense of familiarity with it. Goodness knows why, perhaps my father read these stories to me when I was little. Odd, who was the bibliophile of the group, an avid reader of fiction, replied, I wouldn't buy that. Poe wrote gothic horror and mystery stories, hardly fit for a little girl. And on the subject of mysteries, what? Odd took the book from Elida and began to frenetically search through it. He checked the contents, and then turned to a specific page. Here. I just remembered it. Ulrich sighed in irritation. Would you care to share your brainwave with us? There's this famous short story by Poe, The Purloined Letter, in which the protagonist must find a precious letter hidden somewhere in a great hotel. Well, that sounds familiar. Yes, us. So at the end, what happens? Well, he eventually finds it, Odd snickered. In a letterbox. Don't you see? The police search for this letter for days, but the single place that they fail to check is the one that's most obvious. Seems stupid to me, commented Ulrich skeptically. Odd slammed the book shut, ran down to the ground floor, went out into the garden, checked the mailbox and returned to the attic. Okay. That was a false lead. Ulrich rolled his eyes at the ceiling. I could have told you that myself, he said ironically. Then he thought aloud again in a loud voice. Perhaps he drew it on a sheet of paper, or perhaps in one of his notebooks Elida finished for him. Like this. From the back pocket of her jeans she drew the notebook that she had removed from Kiwi's mouth the previous afternoon, during the first search of the attic. The pages were all blank. But it's empty, Odd observed, disappointed. Maybe he drew it with invisible ink. Yeah, like lemon juice. At those words, Yumi's face lit up. Hey, wait, she cried. Lemon juice isn't the only kind of invisible ink that's easy to prepare. Hopper was also a science teacher, so he must have had some skill with chemistry. I wouldn't be surprised if he used potassium ferrocyanide as an invisible ink. If that's the case, all we need to reveal the secret text is some iron nitrate. They all turned to stare at her, their eyes wide open. The small leather case was quickly opened out on the floor. Inside were rows of test tubes full of various colored substances, alembics, and a little instruction manual. Much of this stuff has probably expired, Jeremy ascertained. Hopefully it will still work for us. Elida chose a test tube full of honey-colored crystals, opened it and poured the contents onto the first page. Some damp must have penetrated the test tube, because the iron nitrate fell in a single mass onto the sheet, resting on the white page like a dense stone. Elida began to crumble it between her fingers, delicately rubbing it into the paper. And incredibly, one by one, letters appeared, blue letters written hastily years ago. My little Elida, I can only hope it is you reading this. Recognizing the handwriting of her father, Elida suddenly felt weak. A hand went to her mouth and she sat in still silence, watching the words that had been intended for her taking shape on the sheets of the notebook. You must go down to the basement of the Hermitage and into the refrigerator room. Once there you will see. With her hand trembling from emotion, Elida started scattering iron nitrate over the following pages. A little bit at a time, a stylized plan of the Hermitage appeared, together with instructions on how to access the hidden room, behind the walk-in refrigerator. See, I said it was in there. Odd joked. In total the writing spread across 4 pages. At the end of the 4th there was a short final note, I love you. And a signature, Daddy. The remaining pages were blank. Odd sprang to his feet. Last one to the basement washes the plates, he yelled, and then he rushed down the stairs. The refrigerator room had no windows, it was a simple gray rectangle of thick walls, furnished with 2 rows of low shelves on each side. Set into the ceiling were the open ends of the conduits that led to the refrigerant motor that cooled the environment. Mounted on the walls were big hooks for hanging meat on, but they were now empty, apart from cobwebs and dust. Elida opened her father's notebook and again read out the instructions he had left her. Standing with your back to the door, look for the 3rd hook from the end, on the left hand wall. There it is. Ulrich indicated towards it. Pull it towards you. Ulrich climbed onto the shelving units to reach the hook and hung onto it. They heard a loud clang and, with a soft click, the hook dropped several centimeters from its original position. Now, on the right wall, count down to the fourth shelf from the top and raise it. Odd carried the operation out, pushing the shelf in towards the wall. Close the door into the room. Then reopen it and shut it again. I've done it, Jeremy announced. Fin ally, P-Ul on the hook again. This time, as well as the click, they heard a mechanical creaking, and in the far wall of the room a door opened, one so narrow and low that to pass through one would need to crawl on hands and knees. On the other side, in a room that had been sealed for at least 10 years, a light turned itself on. They entered one at a time, first Ilida, then Jeremy, then Odd, Ulrich and Yumi. Standing, they found themselves to be in a simple room with white walls that seemed freshly plastered. From the center of the ceiling there dangled an electrical cable, a single bulb swaying slightly at the end of it. The only furniture was a dark leather couch that had been arranged to face a cabinet resting against the opposite wall, on which a television set and a video cassette player sat. They were old models. The TV was deeper than it was wide, with a curved screen and a protruding cathode ray tube that pressed against the wall. "Nuts," said Odd. "This thing takes video cassettes. What a museum piece." Jeremy smiled. This room was sealed before DVD technology was invented. What I don't understand is why he went to so much effort, the enterprise of constructing this and everything, just to hide a couch and a TV, commented Ulrich. Perhaps this is where he came to watch sports events when his wife was hampering him. No one responded to Odd's quip. And then he suddenly remembered Elida's great solitude. They quickly arranged themselves on the couch, Ulrich and Odd sitting on the arms because there was not enough space on the actual cushions. Jeremy began to fuss over the video player. "There's a tape already inside," he said. "Give me a moment." The TV came to life, showing the classic gray background that indicated there was no signal. Then the recorder clicked, and the image on the screen switched to black. Jeremy turned up the volume and joined the others on the couch. "Whatever this thing is, it's starting." Sweet music began to play from the old television's loudspeakers. Piano music. Images, old photos yellowed with age, began to slowly montage in time to the music. Elida, only 2 or 3 years old and scampering through the garden of a mountainside chalet, a simple wooden tricycle standing to one side in the grass. Elida again, at the same age and in the arms of an incredibly beautiful woman, with clear blue eyes and familiar reddish hair that grew freely over her shoulders, the two of them wearing matching short dresses patterned with flowers. "Mummy," she whispered, her voice strangled with emotion, while the sequence of images continued to play. Her mother again, this time wearing an elegant evening dress and high heels, around her neck were a string of pearls that sparkled perfectly against her clear complexion. Hopper and her mother together, both wearing white laboratory coats. Professor Hopper was smiling widely, his round face half hidden behind a thick, dark beard. And then, without warning, Hopper's voice resounded through the speaker apparatus, superimposed over the music while new photos played on the screen, Elida on the piano, Elida playing with her favorite doll, Hopper smiling from behind a barbecue. "My dear little Elida. It's my hope that you are here to see this video. I've taken some care in hiding it, knowing that your passion for chemistry and the blank notebook would lead you here. I hope that I know you well enough to have not made a mistake." The montage of piano music and photos stopped, and in their place the professor himself appeared, sitting on the same sofa on which the group were now themselves squatting. He was dressed in a chessboard patterned shirt and sitting with his back straight and his hands laced together over his stomach. Behind the dense lenses of his glasses, his eyelids were swollen with tiredness. "Nevertheless, if you are watching this film, then it means things have not gone well for me. I swore that if I returned to the Hermitage at the end of this great adventure, that I would come directly into this room and set fire to this video cassette. If that is not the case, then I'm possibly not around anymore. This breaks my heart. I may not be there for you, my dear. The photos from the beginning of this video are the only gift I can offer to help you not feel alone." Jeremy turned towards Elida. The girl's eyes were fixed on the screen as if hypnotized. "Meanwhile, I feel I owe you some explanations. When you were born, I was still living under my real name, not Franz Hopper, but Waldo Schaffer. At the time, your mother Anthea and I were working in Switzerland on a top-secret project named Carthage. But late in the project, we realized that our work was to be used not to benefit humanity, but to dominate it, and so we made the decision to escape. But we were unsuccessful. Your mother was kidnapped and taken away from us. I don't know where she is being held captive, but I am certain that she is still alive. I can only hope that she is alright. You cannot imagine how long I have searched for her. I did all that was in my power to find her again, but I also had to think of protecting you. I hid in this city and began teaching at Kadic Academy, under the assumed name of Franz Hopper. While here I also created Lyoko, using the same programs that your mother and I developed together under Project Carthage. It was my intention that Lyoko would protect us from the malign intentions of Carthage. But nevertheless, in the course of time, they tracked me here as well. And now that they have arrived, I must make fresh preparations to escape again. But they've attempted to capture you, and injured you in the process. And injured you severely, a bullet to the head. You were in danger of dying. Elida brought a shaking hand to her head and, probing between the hairs, she felt a thick scar. I alone had the means to cure you. And, if you are listening to me now, you already know what I mean. When I complete recording this message onto the video cassette, I will take you with me and lead you to Lyoko. To keep you safe. To heal you. But I am very afraid Elida. X.A.N.A. The rest of the sentence dissolved in interference, and the image on the screen flickered for an instant. But if you're listening to me know then things clearly did not go according to plan. And so you must destroy the supercomputer and everything hidden beneath the old factory. And here's where we came in, Odd murmured. You must destroy it in order that no one else can find it and use it for themselves. But it's not the invention itself that is the problem. It is the men. These men are dangerous, Elida. These men are evil. On the screen, Professor Hopper dried his eyes with a handkerchief. His voice was shaking with emotion and anger. Then he continued, and now we come to the second thing I must ask of you. Open the TV cabinet in this room. Inside you will find a wooden box. It contains a chain with a pendant. It was a gift that your mother made for me, and I in turn gave an identical one to her. Please treasure it as if it is the most precious possession you have. And then Elida, you must find your mother. I know that this is a difficult and dangerous task, my dear, but you're clever and brave, and there will certainly be someone there to help you, as there has been for me. So if you ever need help you can call on the aid of, interference cut the word in two, and the video skipped ahead several seconds. If you ever have need, turn to them. And when you embrace your mother again, please give her a kiss for me. The video jumped ahead again due to further interference, but this time nothing else played. Nothing's wrong with the cassette, Jeremy sighed in regret, having moved forward to check the player. That's the end. There isn't any more. In silence Elida rose from her place, stepped up to Jeremy and gestured for him to move aside with a light touch of her fingers. Then she opened the dark door in the front of the cabinet. Just as her father had said in the video, on the inside was a wooden box, little bigger than the palm of one's hand. She opened it, and extracted the pendant from within. It was affixed to a thin golden chain, a little larger than a coin, and shone so brightly that Elida could see her reflection in it. Incised into the surface of the pendant were two letters, W and A. And beneath them was the image of a sailor's knot. Waldo and Anthea, she murmured, now remembering her father's true name. And a knot, said Jeremy. Yes. Together, forever. 19 Eva Skinner, California, United States of America, January 10th. The first flight to France was due to take off at 6 in the morning and the loudspeakers were instructing its passengers to head towards the boarding gate. Eva Skinner started off through the long corridors, dragging behind her a rigid trolley that she was using to carry her hand luggage. She had changed her clothes, and now was wearing a pair of smart jeans and a color-stained t-shirt. She was smiling. To her mind humans were very complicated creatures. To travel from America to France required her to purchase a ticket and they needed visas and special permits because she was a minor and unaccompanied. There was the necessity of luggage. And clothing. And once she arrived in France she would still have to travel to the city where the school was located. But things were not too bad. She had taken advantage of the free time in the airport to connect to the internet and make the necessary preparations for her arrival. The headmaster would be ready to receive her tomorrow with open arms. A foreign exchange student, a girl from the United States. Eva passed the retail outlets and the duty-free stores that were one by one opening for business in the huge terminal building. She studied the monitors in search of her gate. Number 27. She had to follow the signs and get a move on. The flight was already boarding. The hostess smiled. She was a nice girl, wearing a comical little hat that was matched with a chaste tailored uniform bearing the name of the airline. Your name please? Eva. Eva Skinner. One moment please. She keyed something into her computer and then smiled again. One seat booked in first class. Traveling unaccompanied. Fine. Young lady, could you please show me your boarding pass and the authorization of your parents? Of course. Eva handed the woman a brochure for a chain of fast food restaurants that she had found on the floor shortly beforehand. See Burger deal, only $1.25. Children eat free. In handing it to the hostess, she painstakingly ensured that her long fingers brushed against hers. The woman opened her brochure, which contained a big color photograph of a cheeseburger, and nodded with a blank expression. That's fine, young lady, you can pass. My colleague on board will direct you to your seat. Eva nodded and moved onwards. Then she slipped with the other passengers into the long metal tube that led into the aircraft. First class was almost empty. Next to Eva, but separated from her by a little aisle, a woman in a dark suit was concentrating as she worked on her laptop computer, and on her other side, was a rather elderly gentleman. He had been dozy even before they took off and was now dribbling on a $500 tie. Miss Skinner, is everything all right? Another hostess inquired, wearing the same smile and the same uniform as the one from the boarding gate. You can unfasten your seat belt now that we have departed. Would you like anything to drink? I'll have the same as that gentleman, Eva answered, indicating the sleepy man. A cognac? Haha, I don't think that would be suitable, miss. Maybe you'd prefer a glass of fruit juice. Yes. That. The hostess hurried back up the aircraft's long aisle, her hips wiggling. She seemed happy to be making herself useful. Perhaps that was how she was paid, in making her feel useful. The armchairs here in first class were so big and soft, comfortable. Perhaps she should sleep, without having to worry about what happened to the body of Eva Skinner. XANA could calmly reflect and plan ahead. There were so many things that it had to consider, for example, how to befriend those children and earn their trust. And above all else, how to kill them. 20. The first day of school, City of the Iron Tower, France, January 10th, Yumi, Jeremy, Odd, Elida and Ulrich arrived at Kadic's main gate about 10 minutes late. Eventually they had fallen asleep. But hardly an hour had passed before their alarm clock began to ring. And so there they were, breathing heavily and their eyes burning after a sleepless night. And so it begins, again, commented Odd. We have 2 hours of chemistry first, said Jeremy, checking his schedule. I've got history, added Yumi. And I better get moving, Professor Fumit is usually already in the classroom by now. Wait a second, replied Odd, annoyed. Are we going to start all over again, with the Hermitage and Lyoko? Well, it seems clear to me, Jeremy nodded. We'll search for Elida's mother. But we'll leave the supercomputer deactivated. Elida was wearing her father's pendant around her neck. Ulrich smiled. Guys, we're better off discussing this another time, all right. Yumi transferred her rucksack of books from one shoulder to another. Well, the prof waits for no man. I've really got to head off, guys. We'll see each other at dinner then, in the cafeteria. Awesome. Well, have a good first day everybody, she answered, quickly setting off up the path beyond the gate, continuing ahead of the others. It was January and finally it had stopped snowing. Weak but bright sunlight sparkled on the freshly salted streets. The footprints of many little gym shoes were trampled into the path leading up to Kadic's entrance. 5 children who were almost dead on their feet started running up the frozen driveway. Happy to still be together, in spite of everything. Before them rose the Academy's palatial main building, solemn and majestic. But there was nothing threatening about it. The winter sun was shining on the closed windows and the great main door was wide open to receive them. They entered with a jump.
Well, that was a long journey. And the content of all the chapters. Yeah. Alright, it jumpstart from there. Cool. But anyway, yeah. So even in the beginning of France, the little kids are going to be getting into school. And wishing you luck, Leo Warrior. And man, that extra part with all the Fred Hopper, that a little bit part of like the season 2 finale, the key, and a little bit in the evolution, a little bit, but now with this pendant, now I'm getting kind of curious to see what happens next. But for now, this has been the book 1 of Code Lyoko Chronicles. And now, thank you for the fan translation makers for making the book, and I guess I'll see you guys in the next video. This has been such a treat to do, and I'm glad that I got to do this now that I have a YouTube account and get to share it with all of you. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye bye now. See ya.